Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name's Amanda and I'm glad that you could join me today. To start off, before we talk about today's topic, can you tell I got a little bit of a haircut? Yeah, I chopped it as a matter of fact. I felt it was time for a change and I'm really enjoying it. My boyfriend is getting used to it. He misses my long hair, but I am enjoying it. So I think it'll grow on him. Or at least he'll tolerate it until it grows back out. Either way is fine with me. But enough of that. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new, welcome. If you have been with me throughout the whole past, then just bear with me for a little bit so I catch everybody up, okay? So we have been talking in this series about big questions that you face in your life. And the biggest question that I've faced in my life has been regarding what I believe, what my faith is. Do I believe the teachings that I've been taught? Things like that. So as a bit of a background, I grew up in a Christian denomination known as the United Church of Christ. And I struggled with different thoughts and questions my entire life, essentially. And it got to a point after meeting my boyfriend and going on different experiences that I chose to leave Christianity. And I am in the process of converting to Judaism, and I'm very excited about that. So today's episode is all about a class that I needed to take as part of this transition period called Judaism 101 and a couple of the experiences that I've encountered thus far. I am not finished with my conversion yet, but I am on the way, and every day I get a little bit closer to being officially converted, and that's an exciting process for me to share. So let's get started. So after I met with my sponsoring rabbi, he informed me that I would need to take part in something called Judaism 101. Completely fine with me. It's basically a class that was designed to give you a basic understanding of Judaism. I didn't think much about it. I knew from my background that if you were Christian and you changed denominations, then you typically met with the pastor once or twice and they kind of gave you the layout of how that church worked, and then you were fine. But when he told me about Judaism 101, I was taken back just a little bit because there's a textbook. Yeah, it's a textbook that goes along with it. And I was a little bit taken aback, like, whoa, okay, this is much more serious than a Christian transformation or conversion. Now, the textbook is interesting. It's not, I can show you a page quick. So it's not a ton of text, but it's meant to spur a great deal of discussion. So the Judaism 101 class that I was a part of was available both in person and virtually. And because of my geographical location, I chose to participate virtually. And there were about 12 people in the class. Some were there the entire time. Some kind of started later or dropped out a little bit earlier due to different life circumstances. But they were all important and they all had different viewpoints to share, which was great. So let me tell you a little bit about the book. So it's called On One Foot, and there's a reason for that. So there is this very, very smart, intelligent, well-known rabbi named Rabbi Hillel, and he told the story that there was somebody who was being a bit snarky and sarcastic, and they kind of challenged Rabbi Hillel and said, well, I'll convert to Judaism on the contents that you convert me right here, right now, standing on one foot. Okay, so he thought about it for a moment, and he said, that which is hateful to you, do not do unto others. The rest is commentary. Go and study. So that might sound kind of familiar to you. That which is hateful to you, do not do unto others. It sounds a little bit like the reverse of the golden rule, doesn't it? Yeah, the golden rule, if you don't know it, is do unto others as you'd have done to you. Okay? And in the New Testament for Christians, they use the phrase, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And that's supposed to take care of everything else. So basically, what Rabbi Hillel did was he flipped it. He focused on, because everybody has different interpretations of what love is, he focused on, well, if you don't like something, if you feel like something would be harmful or hurtful to you, then don't do it to other people. So it's not focused on just what you love or what you interpret as love, because people tend to have a much more specific barometer for what do you find hurtful or offensive. What do you not like? Then don't do it to other people. People may still feel offended or maybe still hurt by words or actions and things like that. You can't control everything, but that was the general premise. And that person was converted on the spot. So that's why our book is called On One Foot, because it really gets to the nitty-gritty portions of what is Judaism. And there's a lot in Judaism. There's a reason that they have a course called Judaism 101. They cover so much more than a Christian transformation or conversion. So much more, which you might think, if you're new to Judaism or you're Christian, you might think that's a little bit backwards, because Jesus apparently came after the Torah, so it should be longer. But no. The Jewish people, it's not just a faith. There's a culture, there's the religion, there's practice, there's pride, and there's a knowledge base that you need to have to really accept, appreciate, and own your belief in Judaism. It's so much bigger than any Christian belief that I've ever experienced. You need to really have an understanding of the timeline of the Torah and the different portions of the Torah and why they're important, and different people and why that's important. There's so much that it's mind-boggling. Now, the great part about Judaism is they fully acknowledge, accept, and expect that your learning never ends. They know that there's a lot to unpack in Judaism. It's just a given. So they fully know that if you choose to convert, you are not going to be an expert, nor is anyone else that is going to be in that synagogue with you. But we can all learn from each other and our interpretations, and we are encouraged to have discussions. The awesome part about Judaism discussions compared to what I've experienced in Christian discussions or Bible studies is, so a Christian Bible study I've experienced as being a pastor reading it and saying, okay, this is what it means. And it's very much like a one-sided, and people sometimes ask general questions, but nope, this is what the pastor says, this is what it is. Whereas in Judaism, they'll take a passage and they'll read it, and then they'll kind of tease it apart. And what do you think is meant by here? And well, why this or why that? Or could this mean this way? Or could, and it's just, it's thoughtful, engaging, and meaningful discussion. And the difference is, in Judaism, any discussion and questions, they tend to focus it strictly on the text. Whereas my experience in Christianity is, if you question too much, they don't question the text, they start questioning you, your interpretation, why you don't believe, why you're struggling with it. Almost like they're trying to find fault in you for having questions. Again, my experience. So that was Judaism 101, and it was a great class. It was not led by a rabbi, at least not for me. I was taught by somebody who I believe she was a doctorate of education. Very knowledgeable, had lots of great stories to share and experiences to share. She had been Jewish for her entire life, and wonderful lady that I greatly appreciate. So that was my Judaism 101 course. We met about 3 times a month, and it was about once a week. Now, the tricky part was, so at the end of every class, we would say, okay, so next week we're going to talk about this portion. Now, me being a teacher and a little bit of an overachiever, I tend to read that. I want to come to class prepared, and that's not what this class is about. We read the text in class, and we discussed it in class. So because it was the second time or sometimes the third or fourth time reading it for me, and it was either the second discussion that I've had or the second reflection I've had, depending on whether I reflected on it individually or with my boyfriend, I was ready for it to go a little bit deeper. But at that point in my process, I was not doing a very good job of advocating for what I needed or wanted. I was taking a more passive role and trying to be the good student, and just I'll follow along and I'll ask my questions at a different time. But I didn't do a very good job of that, quite honestly. So while you're in Judaism 101 class, you still meet with your sponsoring rabbi about once a month, once every 2 months, depending on how your schedules work out. And those questions were very thought-provoking, and I learned a great deal from my sponsoring rabbi. He's a very nice man, very knowledgeable. I could sense that he was very busy, unfortunately. So I tend to need a little bit more guidance and encouragement, and I wasn't quite getting that from him. So after discussing my frustration or lack of progress, if you want to call it that, with my boyfriend, he suggested that I come up with my own list, essentially, of this is what I want to do. I'm taking basically ownership of my conversion process. This is what I want to do. This is what I feel I need to prepare myself for conversion. So following the Judaism 101 course, our class decided that we wanted to do like a Torah study, where we basically took different stories or verses from the Torah and really dig in deeper to it, and more deeply to it, And unfortunately, time-wise, that just didn't allow. So again, I just relied on my list to help spur my conversation moving forward. Now, I will share with you what was on my list. So on my list was I wanted to read the Torah, knowing that I'll have a deeper understanding as I continue in Judaism, but I wanted to at least have read it through once. I know that the Torah is essentially the Old Testament from Christianity, with different bits and pieces excluded from Christianity. But there were certain books and verses that I didn't read at all. There were certain things I skimmed over. And I felt to do justice to myself and to this process, I wanted to read the Torah once for myself. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to experience something in each of the different movements. So there in Wisconsin, there's 3 main movements. There's many different movements in Judaism, but in Wisconsin, there's basically Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. And I wanted to experience all 3 just so I had a better understanding, and basically to confirm that I was selecting to practice or be converted in the movement that was best for me. I thought I was in the right movement, but I wanted to double check, because there's a lot of, with the movements, there's different rules and restrictions as far as if they will accept you. So if I was converting under the conservative movement, but if after going through the experiences at the different synagogues, if I felt really drawn toward the Orthodox movement, my conversion would not be accepted. It may be rejected wholly. I may need to do additional classes. I may need to do additional studies. There's different rules depending on the different movements that you're practicing in. So I just wanted to get a feel for it for my own knowledge, and then just to make sure that I was following the path that I was supposed to follow as far as conversion for the particular movement that I seemed most aligned with. Okay. So I wanted to read the Torah. I wanted to explore the different movements, and I wanted to know more about the strong females in the Torah, because in your conversion process, you have to select a Hebrew name. Hebrew names are very important. That is what is used in the synagogue when they call you up for blessing us at the Torah. That is what they use when you come to the Torah to make an aliyah, which is basically a blessing before they read the Torah. That's what they use. They use that for your Yorkside, which is the memory or the anniversary of every year that you passed, so you're not forgotten. Your Hebrew name is important. It's also what ties you to the Hebrew people. It's what joins us all together as one. It doesn't matter if you are a Jew living in Denmark or if you are a Jew living in Africa, you have a Hebrew name. So I wanted to make sure that the name that was given to me, or the name assigned or associated with me, was someone who either embodied me in some way or someone that I felt connected to. I didn't want to just pick a name because I thought it sounded pretty. I wanted to have something more of substance with it. So I wanted to explore that as well. Those were the main things I wanted to do. I also wanted to experience all of the different Jewish holidays again, so I could really experience and participate in them more fully and more authentically. Every year you're going to change as far as your observance levels and how much you understand and what you do. The first time through, quite honestly, the first year through my cycle, I was overwhelmed. I didn't understand everything that was going on, and I wanted to really be able to participate more fully in that process. I wanted to do things and understand the reason why we do them, not just, oh, I'm putting up a Christmas tree because we're German, which is not why they really put up a Christmas tree, by the way. There's other things to be a part of it. So I wanted to have that understanding. So those were the things that I decided I wanted to have. And when I met with my sponsoring rabbi and shared with him those different things, he admitted that, yes, he was getting very overwhelmed, and he kind of dropped the ball a little bit as far as his plans to do a Torah study with our group and how it was kind of falling apart. He actually shared that he was bringing on another rabbi to assist in kind of supporting us in our process because he was just so overwhelmed with other needs in the congregation. Understandably so. Don't slight him for that in the least. So I shared with him my list, and he's like, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then he didn't really have any other guidance for me. So I just started working on my list and started meeting with the other rabbi. So let me tell you about when I visited the other synagogues and had those experiences. Okay? So the first one I experienced was actually an Orthodox. So Orthodox essentially take the Torah and make it they follow it very literally. They do a lot more with traditions and customs and less with, this is what the Torah says. Basically, in the Orthodox movement, my understanding is the rabbis make a lot of the rules and the people follow the rules, just like the rabbi the rabbi's word or the rabbi's suggestion is God's almost, is my understanding. So I experienced actually Purim. I went to a Purim party with an Orthodox synagogue, and some people from my synagogue were attending with us. And now I know a little bit about Orthodoxy. I tune into my boyfriend's channel. His channel is called Blade Talk, and he shares a lot of different information, and he has taught me quite a great deal. He was Orthodox and then switched to conservative movement. So I knew some things going into the Orthodox party, but it was beautiful. Lots of decorations. It was a Purim party, so there was costumes. They were celebrating Queen Esther, and I was surprised at the amount of alcohol that was there. Quite honestly, there was a lot. There was a full bar, and you could walk up and get just about anything you wanted. And it just took me back, because that's something you would never see at a Christian gathering. You just don't typically see alcohol at church gatherings. But so that was a big surprise. And it was interesting to see in the Orthodox movement, the women tend to be more modestly dressed. And you could absolutely tell, looking at the group of people who were there, who was in the Orthodox movement, who was not in the Orthodox movement, just by their appearance, on how they were covered, what parts were covered, how tight their clothing was, and not judgmentally looking or objectifying them at all. It was just interesting to be able to see that so visually. It was interesting to see the Orthodox movement tends to have big families, and that was absolutely the case at our party that we had. And it was a great time. It was wonderful to see all the food. Very generous hosts, as always. Anytime I've went anywhere with the Jewish people, they are very generous and very genuine. So definitely lots of food, lots of welcoming, and it was a great time. They are very specific in their dietary rules, or their kosher laws that they follow, and that was intriguing to me. Like they had a table of food that was just fish, and there were notes that this was a certain thing, so it can't be eaten with this. It was just interesting. Everything was very well labeled, but it was definitely more supportive if you had very strict kosher rules that you followed. So that was intriguing. And then we went into this, like a convention space almost, or like a conference hall, where we had dinner, and that was lovely, delicious. And then, of course, there was lots of music and dancing, and it was nice to feel the energy and the jovial atmosphere. Lots of people laughing, kids everywhere. Then I noticed, as the music was playing, there was in the front a group of men that were dancing in a circle and having a great time. And I was just watching and observing, and I thought, oh, that's neat. Because my understanding was that in the Orthodox movement, men and women do not dance in front of each other, because it leads to thoughts of lust and like viewing them in immoral fashions. So my understanding was that men and women don't do that in front of each other. So I was rather surprised to see the men up in front just doing that little circle. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe they're a more relaxed style of Orthodox Judaism that's practiced here. No. Then I saw these dividers, beautiful dividers, but they come traipsing across, kind of like a fence. And I knew immediately what it was for. It was that divide that women could dance behind. And it wasn't just the sight of them that made me disheartened. It was the men that were carrying them were very jovial, and they started calling out, women folk, women folk. And my jaw just hit the floor, and I was stunned because it almost felt like they were saying, know your place, women. Like, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that the men could dance in front of everybody without a problem. But in order for a woman to have fun and dance, she has to hide behind this curtain because people cannot control themselves from a woman. But men are fine. That did not sit well with me. And as soon as that happened, my whole perception of what was going on was changing. And I, of course, called my boyfriend as soon as I got out of there, and I was like, yeah, sorry, I'm not doing Orthodox movement. I appreciate them for what they believe and how they live and how they practice, and good for them. No. I'm not fully feminist, but at the same time, I don't subscribe to the idea that men can't help themselves, that women are just objects for them to lust over. I feel if you're going to have the rule, then the rule needs to apply to both. And then if the men wanted to dance, then there should have been a barrier, and they can go dance behind the barrier. That's just how I feel. And then if women wanted to dance first, then okay, then the women can go dance behind the barrier. But like it did not sit well with me, to say the least. So Orthodox movement, I quickly learned, was not for me. And then I met with the other pastor the other rabbi that my sponsoring rabbi had linked up with to help support us. And she shared some different experiences. She shared that while she is in the conservative movement, she also was in the reform movement, and she shared some ideas and different insights for that. And she shared a couple of different congregations that she would suggest for me to go and visit. So I checked them out online, did my standard Google searching, and I came across one that I thought looked beautiful and sounded intriguing. And I have a musical background, so when I found out that they had a choir for special things, I thought it was worth a try. So I chose to go down, and my boyfriend was very supportive, like, okay, yeah, go try it out. Quite honestly, he actually had been talking to me for probably a couple of months and said, just based on my experiences thus far, my background, his understanding, he thought that I might actually be more at home in the reform movement. So again, I'm a woman, and I'm German by heritage, so I'm a little bit stubborn. And I was a bit reluctant to go and try the reform movement because I didn't want to change, and I also didn't want him to know better than me in some regards. I didn't want him to say, no, I think we made a wrong choice. I think you need to do here. It was a pride thing. Let's just be honest. It was a pride thing. So anyways, I went to the Reform Movement worship service. So I went to a Friday night, or Kabbalat Shabbat, they call it, when they welcome in Shabbat. And then I went to their Torah study Saturday morning, and I went to a Torah service on Saturday morning as well, right after. So I went to a place, and I was immediately struck with the friendliness of the people. I did not even get from my car to the door before two people welcomed me and said, hey, you should come join the choir. And they know nothing about me, but knowing that that's one of the reasons I selected that synagogue, it made me feel extra special, like they could sense it about me. I know, a bunch of baloney, but that's what I had imagined in my head. So I went inside the synagogue, and it was beautiful. So coming into the worship space, I was immediately struck by, on the wall behind the bema, there is this giant tree of life. It's got stained glass portions, and they're purples and blues and greens and browns, and it's beautiful. It's undescribably beautiful. I loved it. And the tree of life is something in Judaism. It's one of those images or pictures or symbols or aspects that help you remember something in particular. I'll explain in a later video about some of the other ones and what they all mean. But tree of life is always something that I have resonated with. So that was beautiful. I was taken aback. I was struck by its beauty every time that I see it or think about it. I'm just struck by its beauty. Gorgeous. And then as my eyes went up, on the ceiling, there was a menorah. A menorah. So a menorah is basically a fancy candle holder. I'll just symbolize it like that. Again, I'll explain it in a later video. But basically, the menorah on the ceiling was to encourage those worshiping in that space to share your light, share your knowledge, share your wisdom with the world. Share your knowledge of Torah, share your knowledge of God, share your knowledge of love. And I just thought it was so peckin' beautiful. It was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It was beautiful. And there was just a sense of, home there. I didn't know anyone in that space, but I felt home. And it's so weird to say that. So of course I get out of service and I immediately call my boyfriend, and I have to tell him, like, oh my goodness, I had such an amazing experience, and yes, you were right. And I think we need to change who my sponsoring rabbi is. I think I want to belong to this synagogue. This is my home. This is where I want to be. And he, of course, was right and proud of that, but also very, very supportive and encouraging of me. Very encouraging of the process, and wanted to hear all about it. And that was great. So I, of course, had to then contact the rabbi and say, hi, I'm new here, and would you please sponsor me? And I was nervous, because I'm nervous about almost everything. But I was nervous that he would say no. I was nervous that it was a bigger synagogue than my previous one. I was nervous he wouldn't have time for me. I was nervous he would be so busy he wouldn't even respond to me. But he responded right away, and he said, oh, great. Sounds like you had a great first experience. Let's set up a meeting, and I want to hear about your experience thus far. I want to know more about you before I say, yes, I'll be your sponsoring rabbi or not. So again, call my boyfriend immediately, share all the great news that this is happening. And then I start to fret a little bit about, okay, so I had this great experience. What if this rabbi isn't who I thought I connected with? What if it's different? He's like, just calm down. Get out of your head. Just calm down. He tends to tell me that a lot, in case you're wondering. So I had that experience. I set up a time to meet with the rabbi, and it was so easy. He was so relatable, and he listened to my story, and he asked questions, and he seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I didn't seem on edge or anxious. I just owned my process and who I was, and he listened, and he shared with me a list of things that he typically has people who are interested in converting, like that's their checklist. So we went through that, and I had almost all of them checked off, which was very exciting for me that he acknowledged that, because with my previous sponsoring rabbi, I felt like I didn't know where I was going. I felt like I was just kind of in a stall pattern, and I didn't know. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know what he expected. He would randomly say a comment, and I felt like I was all of a sudden on the wrong path. I felt more unsure. But with the Reformed sponsoring rabbi, he seemed very well organized, and he really let me take control. I shared with him my list of things that I thought I wanted to do, and none of those were on the list for him, but he supported them. And he's like, okay, so tell me more about why you want to do this or why you want to do that. And great conversations from that. The one thing I didn't have completed yet was a reflection paper. And when I asked him a little bit about that, he shared that the reflection paper is basically thought-provoking questions that you answer, and then you give those answers to the Beidin, or the group of people, the knowledgeable Jews that are going to sit with you and kind of not test, but they're going to gauge your authenticity. They're going to gauge whether you are truly wanting to convert. Are you going through this just because somebody else is making you? Are you doing this just to make your boyfriend, your fiance, your husband happy? Are you doing this because you're called for it? They want to test your character. They want to just see, are you doing this for the right reasons? So we went over that, and that's actually something I'm still working on. Lots of great questions are on there, but that's where we're currently at. So I completed my Judaism 101 course. I have a new sponsoring rabbi. He's amazing. I am working on picking out my Hebrew name. I'll have another video coming up about that one, about what the importance of a Hebrew name is, and I'll even talk a little bit about some of the names that I've thought of. Maybe I'll give you a teaser and let you know what it is. Maybe I'll make you wait. I'm not quite sure on that yet, but it's been a process. And the one thing I've learned about in this conversion process is I need to own it. It has to be me. And my boyfriend helped me own that in the beginning by encouraging me to do things on my own for myself, because I needed to do it for myself. He's always been a source of support and guidance, and he'll share ideas and information, but he doesn't force me to choose one thing over another. He gives his opinion, and then he kind of lets me sit with it until I come to my decision by myself. And I appreciate him for that. So Judaism is not an easy process to change to. The conversion process is not easy. It takes a long time. I've been in the process for over a year, but it's one that I truly and honestly can say is worth it thus far. I feel like I am a more authentic person. I have a more firm understanding of the Torah, and I am proud of who I am. And that's awesome for me. And I hope that you find what is right for you. But I'm going off on a tangent. So next time we will talk about more on my process. Can't wait to see you. Take care.